I'm sending this out as a remembrance for Phillip and Bernice Rasmus. They were really matriarch and patriarch of our family, king and queen of the realm. And anyone who knows her knows this about Bernice, but I'm going to say it anyway. Her love language was food and hospitality. Even if you'd been far away for a long time, returning to her house was like coming home into a place you were loved and accepted for who you are, no matter what. She was among the most generous people on the planet, and she would invite you into her house, and she would cook and share her delicious meals, and she would send you recipes and tell you how she cooked it so perfectly so you could try. My favorite times with her would be when we were side by side looking out at the same thing, enjoying the scenery. Or after the party, standing next to each other, washing and drying dishes, having a conversation and sharing some philosophy or grief over some shared loss. And one of my favorite things to do with Phillip was to sit in front of the TV watching Jeopardy and have him fast forward through the commercials and the part where people are talking about themselves, and then compete with him to see who could get the answers right first once we got back to the questions. Dennis, I'm thinking of you and envious of you getting to play golf with Phillip every day, and I know how important that has been to each of you in your lives, and it's just so hard to lose that. The last time I played golf with Phillip was the day after my dad died, and Mom and I were exhausted, and he had to have been too. He stayed the whole time we were in the hospital up in Chicago with us, sleeping on those hard chairs in the waiting room or by Dad's bedside. And he'd shave Dad with his electric razor every day, even when Dad was in a coma. And Niece and Dawn were there in the room when Dad died too. That loss was one of the griefs we shared. And I couldn't stay awake, and Phillip drove us home late into the night. We had those uncles who were like machines, driving all night without getting tired or falling asleep. And then Mom and Phil and I got just a few hours of sleep and got up early the next morning and went golfing. And there was this extra set of clubs in the garage. They were right-handed clubs, and Phillip was left-handed, and he used them anyway, but he didn't swing right-handed. He turned them upside down so the club faced into the earth and swung left-handed. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Driver or a pitching wedge or whatever, he still used it like it was meant to be used that way. And he beat me. I know that losing Bernice and losing Phillip is really tearing my mom apart now too. She was really close with her little brother, and she keeps remembering this story of when he was about 2 years old and she was about 12, and the family went for a picnic to the woods outside of Chinoa, and they laid down breadcrumbs so they'd get back to where the picnic was. And then they went off into this trail into the woods, and then they came to the edge of the woods, and there was a road there, but no one was on it. And when they turned around, the breadcrumbs were gone. And at this point, she's, by now carrying Phillip on her shoulders, and no matter which direction they go, they can't find their way out. So she breaks it to him, and she says, "Phillip, honey, I'm sorry, but we're gonna die." And well, of course, they made it back and lived a lot longer than that. But before that and after that, those two have always been there for each other. And they could talk together and laugh with each other and call each other on the phone and talk about hard things. And all throughout, their love for each other showing through. Dawn and Dana, you two were always the brightest stars in Bernice and Phillip's night sky. the stars that come out just after the sun goes down, when the sky's still orange in the west, the stars that are already there burning bright. That's you too. And then over time you married with other brilliant stars and made your own little constellations, and anyone could look into Phillip and Bernice's eyes and faces and see them light up from the brilliant glow of these constellations that you all formed. Just in the last 13 months, we've lost Donnie and Juanita, and now we've lost Phillip and Bernice. And we ask ourselves, how do we do this without them? How can we do this without them? They were guiding the way. And I guess there's the answer. They did show us the way. They lost their parents and their aunts and uncles, and they became matriarch and patriarch, the king and queen of the realm. So that's what we do. We do what they did. So I wrote this poem the other day after talking to Phillip on the phone for the last time, and then talking to my mom around that time. And so here it is. Phones are not made for crying into. So when your mom calls you and tells you your uncle is in the hospital and he's giving up because your aunt died and he's ready to go be with her, so she phoned him and told him goodbye, and telling you this, she cries, that's when phones are not made for crying into. That's when you need to be together in person and you gotta hug your mom. And then you decide after you hang up, you gotta call him too. You have to. Which is like holding your breath, bending over and stepping between the second and third ropes into the ring for one round with Mike Tyson. Because that's what it's like to decide to go ahead and call him too. To talk to your cousin who's spending your uncle's last night with him, and she holds the phone to his ear while you're telling him goodbye. When you're telling him how much he meant to you, how good he was to tell you all the jokes, how good he was to come see you in all your plays, how good he was to spend your dad's last night with him and you and your mom in the hospital, to fire up his electric razor one last time. I've been talking to Dawn and Dana lately, and they spent a lot of time in the hospital caring for their mom and dad. Phillip had been there so long, he started numbering his jokes so he wouldn't have to tell the whole thing and make it easier when he could just say the number of the joke. They told me that late at night in the ICU, when it'd get really quiet and all you could hear was beeping and rustling, Phillip would be sleeping and he'd wake up out of this deep sleep and he'd open his eyes and call out as loud as he could, 42! And everybody in all the rooms down the hall would laugh. And a little time would go by, and then someone else would call out, 73! And no one would laugh. And Phillip would whisper, some people just can't tell a joke. And then somebody else called out, 113! And Phillip cracked up. And he said, I never heard that one before. And when I get real quiet and listen now, I can hear Bernice giggling the way she does, and Phillip with a burst of laughter, and then saying, that's funny, that's funny. And then others in the background saying the same thing. One guy sticking his tongue between his front teeth, his shoulder shaking as he laughs. Way off in the distance, one guy laughing so hard he can hardly breathe. And he takes off his glasses and he rubs his eyes and he complains about his stomach muscles hurting because he's laughing so hard. And then that starts everybody laughing again. family, I love you all. And I wish I could have been there with you for the memorial to give you real hugs in person. And I'm sending those all along with my prayers to you, from my heart to yours, and to you all, big family. Love you so much.